I am so ready for fall makeup tutorials and fall makeup looks just in general this year, so I thought that I would sit down and show you my favourite fall eyeshadow palettes. Basically, whenever I look at these eyeshadow palettes, the colour stories and the tones in these palettes, these are basically the ones that I'm going to be gravitating towards. So I thought I would show you like my favourite fall palettes that I'm more than likely going to be using in my upcoming tutorials, and I've tried to keep them, they're all basically affordable. I think the most expensive ones are a couple from Be Perfect Cosmetics. I feel like most of you at this point will already maybe have these palettes, so that obviously helps as well. So maybe if you have these palettes, me talking about them will get you inspired to using them over the autumn season, fall season, whatever. So obviously the Beauty Bay palettes, this is one of their newest releases. This is the Rich palette and this is their £42 palette. Yeah, £42 palette. These palettes are great. I've raved and ranted until I'm blue in the face. This is the perfect palette for obviously fall. Either way, I kind of feel like it's also something when I add, if you want to use this in the middle of spring and summer, go for it. But these types of palettes and colour stories and tones are just, this is what I'm going to be using come fall and autumn and even into like winter and Christmas time. So obviously, as you know, the Beauty Bay palettes are absolutely great, especially their £42 palettes, because we obviously have a mixture of not only mattes and shimmers. You obviously have your normal shimmers, but you do have a lot of like really nice creamy metallic shimmers in here, and you'll also have a couple of more intense shimmers that have a bit of glitter in them. So it's just that nice wee option. And of course, the matte shades in this palette are just beautiful and rich. I just love how nice and rich they are. They're absolutely stunning. We obviously have our neutral shades at the top to use as transitional shades or to brighten, and we also have like our dark shades to obviously deepen and darken. We have a couple of like plum shades, really nice mahogany reds, and a couple of like nice burnt like terracotta nudes as well. And I feel like it's also very beginner friendly as well, like because there's not too many pops of colour in this. I feel like you're not going to look at this and just be not really knowing what to do with it, because sometimes I feel like, even with myself, sometimes I'll open a palette and I'll start to get really under pressure. Like I'm not really knowing what colour story and what to do or what to play with or whatever, and all the shades are going to work in with each other as well. It's just a really beautiful palette and just definitely like a go-to for this time of year. And do check out Beauty Bay's palettes because they're always on sales and doing promotions, and especially I think next month is Black Friday, although it's not about Black Friday anymore. It's about the whole month of November. I also want to talk about the Earthy palette as well. This is also a £42 palette because I feel like this, because we obviously know in our heads what those fall autumnal shades are, which is your terracottas, your reds, your burnt oranges, pumpkin spice types of shades. But I feel like greens, sagey greens, dark emerald greens, forest greens, just greens in general are beautiful in fall as well. Even greens that kind of look pukey, I feel like they're very, very complimentary on the eyes. Not necessarily the nicest maybe to look at or whatever, but on the eyes, if it's right, it's right, and it's going to look absolutely beautiful. It's definitely something I'm wanting to do, and I had a couple of comments in one of my previous videos because I did ask you what you wanted to see fall tutorials wise, and I had a couple of people say green. These are my kind of people. It's just an all-rounder great palette because it has every shade and tone and even undertone of green that you might need. It's cohesive, it's going to work together, and obviously if we come down to this section of the palette, even if this was just like one of those long palettes that are like, you know, like the Patrick Ta type of palettes, like this as a palette on its own would be absolutely beautiful, but you might not even need this palette. You could actually just go for this palette because these are beautiful shades as well. And we obviously have like a couple of like nice reds to introduce with maybe a green or whatever. Would I do that though? I don't know if I had mixed red and green together, but anyway. We also have a couple of gold, bronzy, antique, brass types of shades as well, because these are also really, really nice to incorporate in with these shades on the eyes, but also in with the greens as well. I can't not talk about Beauty Bay palettes and not talk about the Fiery 2.0 palette. This, yeah, I think this is my favourite. This is definitely my favourite. I love this palette. Oh, I love it. So this is actually a really quite an old palette. Well, it's not really old, but this came out like definitely a couple of years ago, didn't it? And it's just, oh, This is just hot. This palette is just hot stuff. Look how vibrant this is. It's vibrant, it's hot, it's spicy. I've hit pan on quite a few shades because it is well loved and well used, but what I love about this palette again is the fact that it works. It works, and it's a palette that I always gravitate towards. I look at this palette and I'm instantly inspired because I'll maybe look at a certain shade and be like, oh, I'd love to do a makeup look with that shade or that shade or that shade. And even though there is really bright shades in this palette, they're wearable and they're obviously cohesive with the other shades that's in the palette. Also, again, I feel like a broken record at this point and I'm not even halfway through. We have our mattes and our shimmers, which I have to say I love in a palette. Sometimes it's just nice to have a palette where it's all mattes, but sometimes I really do like the fact that you do have a mixture of mattes and shimmers in a palette, because it just means that you're just going to be able to use that one palette on a particular eye makeup look. Just picture like a cozy makeup look, and this is just it. This is it. I also feel that way. Oops, did I just knock my camera? I also feel like that way about this palette as well. Like the shades are just cozy and warm, and you can just see yourself wearing like a really nice smoky eye with one of these palettes, watching Twilight, hot chocolate with marshmallows and cream, fires crackling, you got your pumpkin spice candle going on, it's raining outside, and you're just cozy as fuck. Love it. But the vibrancy and the pigment in these palettes are just so good. Absolutely fabulous for the price point. The colour payoff, the pigmentation, how they blend, how they wear, how they look on the eyes is just absolute perfection. I'm going to talk next about a couple of wee palettes from Be Perfect Cosmetics. Do keep in mind, guys, you can use my discount code with Be Perfect Cosmetics. It gets you 20% off site-wide. It is an affiliate, so it just means that I make a wee bit of commission off it. So this is the Magnificent palette by Miss Glam. I used this recently in one of my tutorials, and I did mention that in that tutorial that I don't use this palette as much as I should. It's a great palette because it has face shades in it as well. We have a blush, a bronzer, a blush, a highlighter, and this is also a highlighter. It would obviously suit you if you have a darker skin tone, or you could use it on the eyes, or a blush topper, or even like a bit of a, no, I wouldn't use that as bronzer, hell nah. This side here is a wee bit more cool toned, and then we obviously have this side here where it's more warm toned, which I will say actually, usually whenever it comes to fall, autumnal tones and shades as makeup, you instantly just think of really nice warm cozy shades. Warm tones are beautiful, lovely, but cool tones, god damn it, bury me in cool tones. And I feel like this is a great palette because it incorporates both, but this is just overall an absolutely beautiful palette, especially for this side here. If you are wanting to go for like the more fall, autumnal, typical shades and tones, the Colourpop palette, this is definitely a go-to fall palette for me. I do think it's very similar to the Earthing palette. There's obviously these green shades and tones in there that you can find in here, and then on this side of the palette you're going to find shades that you'll find in here. So overall I feel like this is a great palette if you just want to have every shade and tone that you would ever want or need for that fall look. Is this a black? I always forget that this palette has a black because it's right up here in the corner. I automatically assume for a black to be down here somewhere, but it's always up here out in the can I finish my sentence? But it's just up here out of the way and I always forget about it. Yeah, that is a black. Oh, yeah. I don't really know what else to say about this palette. You can obviously see yourself, the shades and the tones in this are just absolutely beautiful. It's very much a go-to palette. You obviously have like your brighter shades as well. Like we have Pretty Peachy, Spiced Coral, and there's also a really few wee nice greens in here that are quite bright as well. Moss, Buttercup. You see this palette to do like a really nice green smoky eye. It's absolutely beautiful, so it is. I thought I'd recommend this wee palette to you because whenever I was going through my palette collection, I did come across this, and I know I don't use this all that often. I think I've actually used this maybe once in a tutorial, but I opened it and I just was like, yeah, that's actually really pretty, and especially for this time of year. This is definitely like a really beautiful, rich terracotta toned palette. This row here at the bottom is matte. This is a cream. which I don't really know what you're supposed to do with that. I think maybe like an eyeshadow primer or maybe like a base or something for the shimmers. I don't know, but I'm not too sure if you can see that or not, but it actually has like a bit of colour to it, so I have no idea what this cream is actually used for. And then these 4 shades here are shimmers. And do you know what, like, oh, that's more of a true representation of what it actually looks like. I do apologise, like I have my ring light on and I'm sitting in front of my window, so the lighting might be a wee bit too boom, but overall it's just an absolutely beautiful palette. And because it is Colourpop, it is very, very affordable. It's overall a great wee palette, especially if you love those really nice like terracotta burnt orange types of shades. I have a couple of other palettes from Colourpop. I couldn't not recommend the Stone Cold Fox palette and also the Bare Necessities. I'm not going to ramble and rant on too much about these palettes because you probably know by now, but you obviously just can't go wrong with the Stone Cold Fox palette. This is a cool tone palette and it's just the cool tone palette of my absolute dreams. This colour story of this palette is just absolutely beautiful. And then the Bare Necessities, this palette is absolutely disgusting. Both of these palettes are absolutely vulgar. They're so disgusting, but again, not really too much to say about this palette because it's the perfect neutral toned warm toned palettes. In these palettes, the both of them, whether you're going for warm tones or cool tones or you're wanting something neutral, whether it's warm or cool, again, these 2 palettes are what you're going to want. Probably one of my favourite palettes that Colourpop has actually ever released, and have I used it once maybe, twice maybe? Yeah, literally. It's not as if I use it all the time, but this is the It's a Mood palette. Tell me now that this palette does not scream fall. Fall vibes, fall tones, autumnal colours. Beautiful. If you're going to purchase any palette that I have spoke about today, make sure it's the Beauty Bay ones, but definitely this one. This one is just gorgeous. I feel like with nearly every palette that I have in my collection, this is nearly the most unique colour story, and I love it. Every time I talk to you about this palette in these types of videos, I always come back to the colour story. I feel like it's so aesthetically pleasing to just look at, and it is somewhat different. It really, really is. For it being quite a neutral warm tone palette with a couple of really cheeky colours just kind of thrown in there, it's so wearable. It's so wearable, and it's beginner friendly as well, because I feel like if you look at it right, it's very, very easy to work with, because usually some palettes are just kind of laid out willy-nilly, and I feel like that's sometimes where you can get a wee bit confused on like what shades to work with what, or you know, you're maybe confused on what shades to use or what eye look to come up with. But if you just go down the rows, you see what I mean? So if you want to use like this row, you have all the shades that are going to incorporate really nicely in with each other, and this row here, absolutely beautiful. Or sometimes what I like to do is look at the eyeshadow palette and envision a quad. So these 4 shades here would look really, really nice, or these 4 shades here, or these 4 shades, or these 4, or these 4, you know. That's kind of what I like to do whenever it comes to palettes like this. You know how I feel about a pressed glitter. A pressed glitter is so freaking easy to work with, and it just elevates your look. So they have this really nice, just like gold glitter. Yes, can we focus? Like, look at that. Look at that! Like, can you imagine like this pressed gold glitter on top of, just on the lid or like a spotlight eye, incorporate it with like these green tones and shades. We have another pressed glitter here. This is more of like a bronze color. Look at that, isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Focus please. Stunning. And then this one is more like a really nice like burnt red pressed glitter. Very unique but beautiful. Focus please. Like, yay. Absolutely stunning. And then it has this really unique shade down here at the bottom. Like, as you can see, it looks like just a shimmer shadow, but it's, do you know what it is? It's like a matte shadow with just glitter through it. And I know you're maybe thinking, well, that just makes it shimmer, but it's like, if you have this palette, you know what I mean. But it's just a very unique color. It's a beautiful topper of a shadow. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Like, it literally just, I'm trying to hide my dodgy fake tan. You see this shade, if you're just doing like a blue smoky eye and that shade pressed over the lid, those glitter flecks that's actually through this shadow are just going to add so much dimension to the eye and just elevate it. Absolutely stunning. But the colour story in this palette is absolutely stunning. That's what I love the most about it, because we obviously have, our row of neutrals, and then we have like our greens, our oranges, we have a really nice like mulberry wine shade, and we also have like our blues and our purple. No matter what colour you like to go towards with fall or autumnal makeup looks, this palette is going to have what you want. It's honestly going to have what you need. It's going to have what you want. We also have like those mixtures of formulas. We have our matte shades, which are absolutely beautiful, silky and smooth, really, really buildable, blendable, like fantastic on the eyes, long wearing. And then we have like our shimmer shades, where they're just like a nice wee shimmer, nice wee sheen. And then we have like these like glitter shadows or something, but then we have like our pressed glitters as well. It's just all over, and honestly a fantastic palette. I will actually do my job properly this time and link down below these palettes for you if you just want to go and check them out, have a wee nosy. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for watching, and hope to see you in my next one. Bye.